Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thanks for joining us for tonight's Dhamma talk with Bhante Suddhāso. So this evening, we'll start off with a guided meditation, and then Bhante Suddhāso will share some words of Dhamma. And good evening so far to Aya Vimalanyani. Good to see you, Venerable. Hello as well to Jens, Ron, Adine, Melinda, Kumu, Miguel, and all others who are watching, but not typing in anything just yet. So at this time, I will pass things over to Bhante Suddhāso for this evening's meditation. Okay.
So you can start by getting in a upright position, taking a moment to rock your hips side to side a little bit to find a nice balanced position. Bringing your shoulders back so that they can relax down your back. Opening up the chest and letting the spine rest vertically. With the head tilted very slightly downwards. And bring your hands together in your lap with the thumb tips lightly touching. And take a few long, slow, deep breaths. With each breath, letting the body and mind relax. And just letting go of whatever activities you've been engaged in, thoughts you've been thinking, plans you've been making. Just let all of that come to rest. And just enjoy this present moment. Enjoy hearing whatever it is, whether it's the sound of birds or the sound of traffic, the sound of voices, the sound of wind. Whatever it is, just enjoy this moment of hearing. And what you enjoy, you want to be present for. What you enjoy, you want to feel completely and thoroughly. So also enjoy this body. Enjoy the feeling of this body sitting still, nothing to do. Nothing that needs to be done. So you can put down the urge to do and just enjoy the feeling of this body right here, right now. Being completely present with the feeling of this body. Enjoying the feeling of presence. And be present for this mind, enjoying the feeling of alertness and steadiness in the mind. Enjoying the feeling of the mind resting, not needing to think anything, not needing to remember anything. Just enjoying alert, peaceful awareness.
Thank you, Bhante, for guiding us in that meditation. And welcome to some others joining us. Anita, Linda, Melissa, Kyng, Charles Z, Kai, as well as Marielle, Angela, and Luis, who says greetings from Brazil. So thanks everyone for joining us for tonight's Dhamma talk. And at this time, I'll pass things over to Bhante Suddhāso, who will share some words of Dhamma with us.
We'll start by paying homage to the Buddhas. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So today I am going to speak about karma, and in particular the topic I wanted to bring forward is the subject of inaction, of non-doing. And this is very important because the word karma literally means action. And commonly when we speak about karma, we're talking about what we're doing, something that we do. And usually, in particular, we're talking about intentional actions. And in fact, the Buddha even went so far as to say karma is intention. It's our volition, it's our will to do something, our intention to perform some activity. And we talk about karma through three paths. Three avenues. So there's karma of body, so physical actions, karma of speech, so what we say, and karma of mind, so what we do with our mind. What thoughts do we deliberately think? What emotions do we deliberately fuel? What impulses do we nurture? So actions of body, speech, and mind. And again, the element of intention is very important here. So if one, for example, if you give a peanut butter sandwich to somebody with the intention of feeding them, but you don't know that that person is allergic to peanuts, and then they get sick and maybe even die, well, that wasn't your intention. You were not intentionally hurting that person. You were not intentionally killing that person. Your intention was actually just to feed them. On the other hand, if you knew that the person had a peanut allergy and you made a peanut butter sandwich thinking this is going to hurt them and possibly kill them, and you gave it to them thinking this is going to hurt them and possibly kill them, then that would be a completely different karma. So from the outside, it looks like the same, giving food to someone, and the result is the same. The recipient of the food gets sick or possibly dies, but the karma is entirely different. So in the first case, when your intention is to feed someone, then that's all it is. And you have the karma of of generosity, of doing a good deed, of trying to help someone, of doing something for the benefit of another. The karma of giving food to somebody in need. So that's very wholesome. That's very, very good. And that produces corresponding results. So there are countless discourses where the Buddha speaks about karma. And he speaks about how the results of karma are related to the nature of the karma. So whatever action we perform, the results will be similar. Not necessarily identical, because there's a lot of other factors that influence exactly how we experience the results of our karma, but similar. In the broadest sense, if we do things based upon wholesome motives, then we will get pleasant results. And things based on unwholesome motives will get unpleasant results. That's the broadest understanding of how karma and result are related. And in a few suttas, the Buddha goes into somewhat more detail, giving examples of how the results of karma can be directly correlate to the action performed. For example, saying that if you are generous, then the result is that in the future, whether later in this life or in future lives, you will be wealthy. If you take care of other people, then you will have good health. On the flip side, if you kill living beings, then you will have a short lifespan. If you hurt other people, then you'll have a lot of sicknesses. So the Buddha, he gives these examples of how the results of karma can be very clearly, closely related. There's also an amusing story in one sutta where a layperson was offering a specific food to the monastery. And the monks noticed that this layperson was offering this one specific kind of food. He was always giving this one certain kind of food. And they asked him, like, why are you always donating this particular kind of food to the monastery? And the man said, well, because it's my favorite kind of food. And I want to make sure that I'll have lots of it in my future lives. And then later on, the person dies and is reborn as a deva. And one of the monks is talking to this deva and says, did you get it? And the man, well, now deva, says, I got it. So this is the case where it's actually a direct relationship. He was giving his favorite food, and in the future life, then he received his favorite food. So it's this direct connection. So the point here then is illustrating the very direct functioning of karma, this one-to-one relationship of the operation of karma. And the danger that sometimes creeps in here is the tendency to fixate on the concept of action or activity, so the active element of karma, as referring only to when we do something. In other words, fixating on action, but neglecting inaction, neglecting the karma of inaction. So, for example, occasionally you'll hear people say things like, if you're standing by the side of a river and watching somebody drown, then you can choose to save them if you want, but if you don't, then there's no problem, because you're not the one who's killing them. They're just dying as a result of drowning. You're not killing them. But this is a complete misunderstanding. So there's a number of suttas where the Buddha actually directly says, he defines unwholesome action as either doing what should not be done, or as not doing what should be done. So in the case of seeing somebody suffering, knowing that you have the ability to help them, and choosing not to help them, well, that's a choice, which means it's karma. There's a decision being made, the decision to not do anything. So knowing you have the ability to do what's right, knowing you have the ability to do something wholesome, and choosing to not do it. So this is clearly karma. So again, in the case of seeing somebody drowning and knowing that you might be able to help them, but choosing not to do anything, that would be generating unwholesome karma. That would be generating bad karma, which then will come back to us in some form, some related form. So of course, that's not as bad as if you were the one who pushed the person into the river in the first place. If you were the person who threw them in the water so that they would drown, then of course that's very heavy karma. It's the karma of killing, which is very severe. So in this case, the karma of doing nothing when you have the ability to save somebody else, that's not as strong as the karma of killing, but it's still unwholesome action. It's still unwholesome karma. And it will generate a corresponding result. So drawing from the other examples the Buddha gives, then we could speculate that would then lead to us being neglected when we're suffering. That will lead to us being in need of help and not receiving it. That will lead to us facing perilous, challenging, unjust circumstances, knowing that others can help us and recognizing that they're not helping us. So this is where it becomes very important to reflect deeply upon what we can learn from the teachings on karma. And in particular, whenever reflecting on karma, it's very important to ask ourselves, how can I apply this to my daily choices? So the point of reflecting on karma is not to speculate about what we did in past lives. It's not to speculate like, well, I grew up with parents who had these qualities and those qualities. That must have been a result of doing this or that in my past life. Maybe you're thinking, well, I grew up in a family that didn't have very good food, so I must have been really stingy with food in a past life. But we had good access to education. Maybe I was a teacher in a past life. I mean, that kind of speculation, I guess it can be fun, but it's pointless. It doesn't really do us any good. The more useful thing to ask is, what choices am I making now? Are those choices wholesome or unwholesome? What kind of results are going to come about from the choices that I'm making? And are those choices going to lead to supportive conditions or to detrimental conditions? Are they going to make it easier for me in the future or harder for me? Are they going to make my life more pleasant or less pleasant? Are they going to help me progress towards awakening, or are they going to hinder my progress towards awakening? So again, coming to the case of the karma of inaction then. So we know that, for example, if somebody wants to learn the Dhamma, then action would be to teach the Dhamma. Or action would be to help them find someone who can teach the Dhamma. Or action would be giving them some Buddhist books, or recommending some books to them. Those are all actions, good actions, wholesome actions, which produce wholesome results, produce beneficial and supportive conditions in the future. The karma of inaction, for example, would be doing nothing, not helping. So what's the result there? Again, it's unwholesome. It's harmful. It's counterproductive. It means that we will not be helped. It means that we will be left confused and uncertain, not knowing the Dhamma and not knowing how to learn about the Dhamma. Or if we see others being treated unfairly, and we say nothing, we do nothing. What's the karma of that? What sort of karma is that producing? Again, this is the karma of inaction. It means that others will not stand up for us. Others will not protect us. Others will not care about us. Others will do nothing when we are mistreated. So this is not a supportive condition. It's not a wholesome condition. It's a harmful condition. It's an obstructive condition. So it's important then to take a proactive stance. So recognizing that inaction is also generating karma, then we should be very wary of inaction. We should be very wary of that mindset which says, oh, I don't want to get involved. We should be very wary of that mindset which says, oh, I can't be bothered. Oh, it's not my problem. Be very wary of that mindset. Reflect, what does it feel like on the other side? What does it feel like to be the one who's neglected? What does it feel like to be the one who's not taken care of? What does it feel like to be the one who's not cared about? What does it feel like to be the one who's oppressed or treated unfairly and nobody helps them out? Nobody stands up. Nobody stands up for you. What does that feel like? And is that the condition that we want to be in? Are those the conditions we want to generate for ourselves? Or coming back to the first example, you're drowning. And you look up and you see somebody standing on the shore. And you know that they have the ability to help you, but they don't. They're standing on the shore, just watching as you drown. How does that feel? Not so great, eh? Not so great. On the other hand, how does it feel when you see somebody suffering? You see somebody in a difficult situation and you reach out to help. How does that feel? It feels great. It feels wonderful. And when you're on the receiving end, you're struggling and somebody gives you a hand. You're struggling and somebody helps out. You're having a really hard time and somebody says, how can I make this easier for you? How does that feel? That feels wonderful. Or even if somebody just asks, how are you doing? Seriously, how are you doing? What's going on for you? I notice you've been struggling lately. I've noticed you've been having a hard time. You look upset, you look confused, you look sad. How are you doing? What's going on? How can I help? So when somebody actively displays caring, how does that feel? It feels wonderful. And sometimes that extra help is just what we need in order to start to understand our own obstructive conditions and work through them. So to start to understand what our difficulties and obstacles are and to start to conquer them and move beyond them. So this then is the challenge that we face. How often are we the person, metaphorically, standing by the side of the river and watching somebody drown? And how often do we tell ourselves, oh, it's not my problem. Well, I don't know what to do about it. Well, I can't be bothered. I have more important things to do. How often do we justify inaction? How often do we justify not helping when we have the ability to help? And look at the mind. When we do that, when we know we can help and we choose not to, what does the mind feel like? And you'll notice that's a mind state of suffering. A simple example of this is when you see an insect drowning in the sink. And there's that moment when you're like, I can't be bothered. What does that feel like? You'll notice there's this little pain in the mind, this ache in the mind. It's not pleasant, it's not comfortable, it's not enjoyable. And we also are accumulating bad karma. We're building up the karma which leads to us being neglected in our time of need. So the point I'm really trying to make here is not to fall into the trap of inaction, not to fall into the trap of letting the opportunity to do good slip past us, but rather in every moment always looking to see, what is the opportunity here? What opportunity do I have to do something good for another being? What opportunity do I have to perform a wholesome action? What opportunity do I have to do something good, something meritorious, something wholesome, something beneficial, something praiseworthy? What opportunity is there to help somebody who needs help? Or even to help somebody who doesn't need help, but they're in front of you and you have the opportunity. Why would you pass that up? Why would you pass up any opportunity to cultivate good karma? And if you start thinking in this way, when you start looking in every moment of every day, you start looking for opportunities to do wholesome deeds. You look for opportunities to make good karma. Then you start to realize that your life is filled with those opportunities. You see somebody being mistreated and you go up and you comfort them and you ask, how can I help? What can I do? You see an insect drowning in your sink and you carefully fish it out and put it outside. You see somebody with nothing to drink, so you give them your last bottle of water. You start looking for opportunities to perform wholesome actions. So instead of going through life in this vague, uncomfortable dullness of inaction, this self-centered inaction of like, well, I don't want to make trouble for myself. I'm not going to get involved. What good is that going to do us? What good is that going to do anyone? All that does is it starts slowly stockpiling obstructive conditions. Starts slowly stockpiling obstructive karma. That's all it does. Until one day you wake up in a positively miserable life and you don't know how you got there. Because the other thing about cultivating inaction is that we're also cultivating foolishness. We're cultivating delusion. You have to willingly turn a blind eye to the suffering of others. Which means eventually you start turning a blind eye to your own suffering as well. So this doesn't lead towards awakening. It doesn't lead towards happiness. It doesn't lead towards peace. It just leads to more delusion and more suffering. So inaction is not the Buddhist way. Inaction is not how we cultivate wholesome mind states. Inaction is not how we make progress towards awakening. We make progress towards awakening by actively seeking opportunities for good karma. Actively seeking opportunities to perform wholesome actions. Wherever you are, whoever you're with, whatever the circumstances are. And always looking beneath the surface. Especially anytime we tell ourselves, I can't do anything. Ask ourselves, is that true? Is there really absolutely nothing you can do? Or is it just that you don't want to be involved? Is it just that you don't want to do anything? So you don't want to be bothered? Or maybe that you're worried that your own comfortable situation might be imperiled if you step into helping other people. Is that what's going on? What's going on beneath the surface? Have a closer look. And when you see those opportunities, take them. And when you don't see opportunities to perform goodness, look for them, because they're right in front of your face in every moment. There is not a single moment where you cannot cultivate good karma. So look for these opportunities, relish them, enjoy them, appreciate them, and make the most out of them. So I think that's all I really have to say on the subject. Realistically, this was a 1-minute Dhamma talk that I just dragged into 25 minutes. But sometimes that's what we do here. Because realistically, if there's one thing that you can learn from the suttas, from reading the suttas, it's that the Buddha just keeps telling us the same things over and over and over and over and over again, and we keep not getting it. Until one day, it starts to sink in. So sometimes we actually do just need to hear the same message over and over and over again, in slightly different forms, slightly different wording, slightly different metaphors, slightly different situations. And eventually the Dhamma starts to sink in. It starts to break through our surface level of self-centered delusion. That surface level where it says, well, I don't want to get involved. Such a hassle. It's not my problem. I need to look after myself, my situation. They can look after themselves. At some point, the Dhamma starts to break through those layers of habitual self-inflicted dukkha. And we start to open up to this bright, joyful mind, which is always looking for opportunities to do something good. Always looking for opportunities to make the world a better place. So I think that's all I really have to say this evening. So I think I'll go ahead and stop at this time. Thank you.
Hannayam sadhu Hannayam Tammakataya sadhukatam Dadamase
Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
So thank you, Bhante, for sharing those words of Dhamma. And if there are any questions, feel free to type them in and we'll address them. So there is a question from Amaranta who says, or a comment rather, inaction is a type of action too, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And what about good intentions and the results that don't turn out quite good?
Yeah, so exactly, that was the point I was trying to make through here, is that inaction is also a form of action. As for performing things with good intentions that get not so great results, again, ultimately the good intention is the most important thing, but it's also important to reflect, am I really making an effort to understand the consequences of my choices? So coming back to the example of giving the peanut butter sandwich to someone, you might first ask, oh, do you have any food allergies? So actually making an effort to find out whether or not this is really something which is going to help them or harm them. So this, I mean, of course, that's a relatively silly example. Unless you're allergic to peanuts, then it's not a silly example at all. Then it's literally a deadly serious example. So yeah, if you're going to make food for somebody, ask, do you have any allergies? It's an important question, isn't it? So similarly, in any situation, we actually should be making some effort to investigate what are the actual consequences of the choices I'm going to make. Not just assuming that things are going to turn out well, but actually investigating what happens if I do X, Y, Z. Is it going to get the good results that I want? And sometimes that isn't an option. Sometimes we don't have the ability to investigate. And we do, to some extent, just have to try to run on good intentions and do the best we can. Sometimes that is the way of things. But often we actually do have the ability to learn a bit more about what we're doing and what effects it might have. We do have the ability to cultivate that kind of understanding, and we just don't because of laziness. We just don't bother. Don't bother to really consider the consequences of what we're saying and what we're doing. So it is important. So in the case of somebody who with good intentions does something harmful, then on closer examination, it might turn out that there was good intentions mixed with the unwholesome intention of not wanting to find out whether or not this really was the right choice. So that willful ignorance is also karma, and it's unwholesome karma. So we want to really do our best to try to understand what are the actual real effects of the choices that we're making. And are those actual real effects also beneficial? So not just riding on your good intentions. Okay.
And there's a question from Jay. How about supporting those who harm other living beings? For example, those who have wrong livelihood, like trading in living beings and meat, etc.
Yeah, that's a little more complicated. So the question to ask yourself is, are you supporting that person, or are you supporting the harmful actions that that person is doing? So, for example, if I give a sandwich to a police officer and then that police officer goes out and kills someone, have I done something wrong by giving a sandwich to that person? Of course not. If I was thinking, may this give them the strength to go out and kill people, then that would be unwholesome. But if I'm just thinking, I want to do something nice for this person, then that's an entirely wholesome action. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. The person who's making bad karma in that case is the officer who kills somebody. That's the person who's making bad karma. Not me for giving them a sandwich earlier that day. I didn't do anything wrong by doing that. That said, if we know that somebody is engaging in wrong livelihood, then we should seek for opportunities to communicate to them, if they're open to such communication. If they're not Buddhist, then this gets substantially harder. But you can still find ways to communicate to them that they're doing something that's harmful. See if they have the spark of compassion that you can appeal to. Some spark of wisdom. But it is a lot more difficult if the person is not Buddhist, of course. But in the meantime, you can still be kind to them. You can still be generous to them. Because being kind and generous to them is not supporting the harmful actions they're doing, but it's just helping out a person. It's doing a kind deed for a person. And you can also be totally clear that you don't approve of whatever harmful things they're doing. But nonetheless, you still do something nice for them. Okay.
And Marielle has a question. Can our inaction affect the people that we love? For example, if a woman sees a child who needs help and doesn't help him, can her own child experience something similar to that?
So from a Buddhist standpoint, you cannot create karma for other people. People only experience the results of their own karma. So the mother who neglects somebody else's child is just generating bad karma for herself. Her own child is not affected by that. Her own child is creating their own karma and experiencing the results of their own past karma. But it's not affected by the mother's karma.
And Anita asks, Bhante, is there something like a collective karma of non-doing or a collective karma of wholesome actions?
So my understanding is that ultimately karma is individual, but that there can be the appearance of group karma. If multiple people have similar past karma, which warrants a similar result, then they might happen at the same time in the same place. But that's just an illusion of collective karma. In actuality, it's just each person experiencing their own individual karma.
And Jay says, whenever I get in trouble in life, it's always been because of something I haven't done, never something I did. And Angela says, Bhante, I'm in a difficult situation where some of my coworkers and my CEO are Israeli. I can tell that they're truly afraid and they believe that if their military doesn't launch these attacks, that they could die or be in danger. How can I advocate for the oppressed Palestinians when these good people I work with are also scared and the situation is so complicated that I'm not sure I can knowledgeably discuss the issue with them?
Yeah, I think just acknowledging that you don't really know the best way to describe this, the best way to help this. But keeping in mind that fundamentally, the Buddha taught not killing. He taught not harming. This is the foundation of Buddhist morality, is not killing. So what's the problem? The problem right now is that there's people killing each other. So the first thing, number one first thing, is stop killing each other. But once again, these things are really difficult when you're talking to non-Buddhists. It's really difficult to explain the importance of following morality to people who don't really believe in morality. So in that situation, it actually might be better just to practice compassion for those people. Recognizing that they are caught up in fear. They are caught up in delusion. They are caught up in their own misunderstandings of reality. It's actually a sign of extreme delusion when somebody thinks that the solution to their problems is to kill other people. That's a sign of extreme delusion, and it's a sign of extreme suffering. So have compassion for your coworkers. They're suffering a lot, and they're suffering so much that they're supporting unwholesome actions. That's really sad. And are they experiencing fear? Well, then have compassion for their fear. Wish for them to be free of fear. Be there for them. Because yeah, when people are afraid, then they're more likely to do harmful things. Out of fear, people hurt other people, kill other people. So have compassion for their fear. If they were Buddhist, then I'd recommend things like mindfulness of emotions and cultivating equanimity towards fear and so on. But again, if somebody is not a practitioner of Buddhism, it's really difficult to explain these things to them. So sometimes all you can really do is just give them a hug and give them some chocolate and listen to their concerns. Try to appeal to their better nature. Try to appeal to their kindness, their compassion. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult. In these situations, it's actually hard to figure out what to do. Because realistically, I'm not going to stop the conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I can't stop it. I don't know what I could do about it. But can I help the person who's in front of me, who's suffering from fear and anger and confusion? Yeah, that I can do. So do what you actually can do. Okay?
And Chandrasekhar asks, what sort of karma is meditation? What will be its effects?
Well, it depends on the kind of meditation you're doing, of course. But generally speaking, Buddhist meditation as a whole is wholesome karma. Buddhist meditation is good karma that leads to positive conditions. Samadhi practices lead to happiness, and insight practices lead to wisdom. This is talking in the broadest terms. And of course, Buddhist meditation, if done correctly, produces the karma that leads to awakening, leads to unconditional happiness, freedom from suffering, perfect understanding of the nature of reality. Yeah.
And Adine asks, if people can only experience the results of their own karma, then what's happening when sharing the merit with others?
What happens when you give a sandwich to someone? You're happier, they're happier. So when you're sharing merit with somebody, technically what you're doing is you're generating compassion, which is tangible in your own mind, and it is also tangible in other people's minds. Okay?
And Alex says, by what causal mechanism does engaging in unwholesome inaction lead to being on the receiving end of unwholesome inaction?
Causal mechanism?
Yeah.
Are you asking what the causal mechanism of karma is? So, there's a principle in physics. They say every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So similarly, this then is that everything that we do creates a corresponding result. So every karma produces a vipaka. Every karma produces a result. So similarly, as I mentioned earlier, what we call inaction is technically the choice to do nothing. So that choice is itself an action. There technically is no such thing as inaction, because even when you're not doing anything, you're choosing to not do anything. So that has exactly the same causal mechanism as choosing to do anything else. Choosing to not do anything is still a choice. It's a mental karma. It's a mental action. Okay?
And that's the last question online so far. Not sure if there are any from the live in-person audience. Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So in listening to the explanation about intention, I can't help but to draw a parallel. I'm thinking of the penal code, penal law, where intention is actually central to each crime, and it helps define the degree of the crime and therefore the punishment. And so, for example, when you have homicide, so murder in the first degree, however you want to call it. So there's this, well, nowadays they call it premeditation. It used to be malice aforethought. So there's that malevolence to take somebody's life. And so that would be the highest. And then from there, the less intention to cause harm would be second degree or third degree or whatever the degrees are. And so I'm wondering if that the morality, which is the basis for the penal code, can be sort of understood in the same way when it comes to intention and karma. Obviously, there's no punishment for inaction in the penal code, but I'm just trying to wonder. I'm just trying to figure out.
Actually, there are circumstances of criminal negligence, for example, where to not do something is also a crime. I'm not an expert on American law, but I know that there are some cases where inaction is also a criminal action. But as for your question about intention, yeah, definitely your intention has a very strong effect on the karma. There's some interesting cases in the Vinaya, so the monastic rules, where if you give a poison to somebody thinking, may this kill this person, and they die, then that's the equivalent of murder, of homicide. But if you give a poison to someone thinking, I wonder what's going to happen, then if they die, it's not considered as severe. It's still really bad, so don't do it. But it's because your state of mind is not actively wishing for the person to die, then it's considered to be on a completely different level of karma. So the point is that when you produce the wish to kill another living being, that mental karma is already extremely strong, whether you act on it or not. And in a few suttas, the Buddha emphasizes that mental karma is actually by far the most powerful of the three. Mental karma is far more powerful than body karma or speech karma. Which is also really scary when you realize how quickly and easily we produce thoughts. So this is one reason why we need to learn how to control our mind. Because if we're not careful, we just walk through the day spewing bad karma all over the place constantly. I quiver to think of how much bad karma I've produced with my mind over the course of this life. So yeah, definitely, your intention and mind has an extremely powerful effect on the strength of the karma. Yeah. So there's a huge difference. Like if you spend a week carefully planning a murder, that's a week of really bad karma. Whether you wind up doing the murder or not, that's a week of really bad karma. But if you get really angry and in the heat of the moment, you kill someone, that's still really bad karma. But it's just one moment of bad karma instead of a whole week of bad karma. So it is different. So I think in that there is a certain similarity to how these things are sometimes handled in criminal cases. But it's important not to carry that too far, because criminal law is designed by delusional, unenlightened people, and it shows. Anyone who's studied criminal law to any degree knows that it's a pretty messy, imperfect system. And karma is not about a system of punishment. Karma is just acknowledging the causal nature of experience. That's all. It's recognizing that every action produces a corresponding reaction. That's all. Okay? Anything else?
Mm-hmm. Marielle asks, can we change our karma if we have been abandoned in the past and now we decide to dedicate our lives to people who are abandoned? Can our own karma become our own source of enlightenment?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what Buddhist practice is all about. Yeah, it's about taking control of your own karma production and bending that karma production towards what's good. Yeah, it's exactly what Buddhism is. Okay. This is also why it blows my mind whenever I encounter Buddhist people who say they don't believe in karma, is I'm like, but what do you think Buddhist practice is? It's karma. Buddhist practice is all about taking control of your karma and bending your karma towards a particular goal. That's exactly what Buddhism is. If you don't believe in karma, what the heck do you think you're doing? It just makes no sense. Okay, any other questions?
Looks like that's it online anyway. So it seems like...
Anything else? Oh, yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Yes.
I'm just kind of thinking in terms of the previous question, what about people who suffer from mental illness and their impact on others, maybe possibly a negative impact, but through the cause of the illness that they're suffering from?
Well, in terms of the choices that people who are severely mentally ill make, again, drawing examples from the monastic rules, literally every single monastic rule, all of them, have an exemption, which is for insanity. So if a monk breaks any of the monastic rules because of insanity, then it doesn't count. Any of them, from the most minor to the most severe. So this is recognizing that when somebody, and so this is not talking about like mild conditions, like if you just have a little bit of depression or anxiety or something, that's not what it's talking about. This is talking about like serious delusional psychosis kind of circumstances. So if as a result of severe psychosis, somebody does something harmful because they don't understand that they're doing something harmful, then they're not generating bad karma. Rather, they are continuing to experience the results of past karma. And one of the results that they're experiencing is accidentally doing harmful things. That's a form of suffering. You want to do something good, but you accidentally cause harm. That's a form of suffering. That's a form of dukkha. So that's dukkha vipaka. It's the result of having of something unwholesome in the past. But again, the thing that's important to focus on there is that the person is actually trying to do something good, and it's just as a result of their mental health problems that it's not coming out correct. So then what we should do is to try to help the person to gain mental health. We should try to help the person with getting the proper treatment that they need. And recognizing that there is that goodness in them. And that if we help them to get the right conditions, then that goodness will manifest in a more helpful way. Okay? Anything else?
There's a question from Bhavani. It says, are causes and karmas the same?
Yeah, you can say it that way. Yeah, you can say that karma vipaka, karma is cause and vipaka is effect. It's one way of talking. It's important to remember, though, that we are creating karma in every moment. So we're constantly creating causes and experiencing effects in every moment. Okay? Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say a little bit more about abandoning unwholesome behaviors and really making the intention not to do them again. And there's a number of suttas where the Buddha speaks to that and how important that is. And so we can make a difference in our life, even if we had in the past done harm. Then we can, moving forward, instead of regretting, well, we should feel remorse in a healthy way that wasn't the appropriate thing to do, and having that motivate us to stop, and then to so that's a kind of inaction, is abandoning unwholesome action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a kind of a twist on what you're and to see the impulse to do something that's harmful and not acting on it. This is another way to change one's karma, really intending to stop unwholesome behaviors. So that's just another aspect of the subject you're talking about. So, yeah, we're not like locked into, like if we have done unwholesome behaviors in the past, we're not, we can actually change the future result by abstaining. And we'll still have some result, but it won't be as great as if we just continue these behaviors. So,
Yeah.
this is really, I think, another, as well as making the choice to do wholesome actions when we can, making the choice to stop, to abandon unwholesome behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so as you pointed out, the Buddha also said that wholesome karma is to do what should be done and to not do what should not be done. So that's the other side of the karma of inaction, which is not doing harmful things. So that's inaction producing good karma, is to not do wholesome things. So we want to avoid the inaction of not doing wholesome things, and we want to cultivate the inaction of not doing unwholesome things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Seems like that's it for tonight. So thanks everyone for joining us. And you can return tomorrow morning for Sutta study. And then tomorrow evening, we'll have a talk from our special guest, Ajahn Pasanno, a senior monk who's visiting us from Abhayagiri Monastery in California. And he'll be with us for about a week. So you can tune in for all the talks he'll be giving. And if you're in the local area on this coming Sunday, we'll be having our Vesak celebration here at the monastery outdoors, celebrating the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and passing away. So join us if you can, and you can find more information about the live streams as well as the outdoor programs on our website. But for now, we can end with 3 sadhus.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.